everyone. Hello, this is Black Kids in Outer Space. And my name is Lark Lowe. I'm the host. Today we have Oboi Reed. Let me give you his bio. Reed's passions are community, culture, and health. He works internationally as a tactician, a strategist, a mobility advocate, community development practitioner, and community organizer in the fields of bicycle equity, transportation justice, and access to mobility in marginalized communities of color. He's also the president and CEO of Equiticity, a national advocacy movement operating at the intersection of equity, mobility, and the justice and communities of color across the U.S. In 2015, Oboi was awarded the White House Transportation Champion of Change by the White House and the United States Department of Transportation. Thank you so much for being here, Oboi.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Lark. It's an honor to connect with you. We've been following each other on social media for, I guess, about 6 months now. I had the pleasure of meeting you in DC recently, and it's an honor to be on this podcast with you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming here. And you're also going to be the keynote speaker at the New Jersey Bike Walk Summit on March 24th, which we are so excited about. So I'm going to just kind of just jump in.
Okay.
We have, I was reading in the Chicago Tribune an article by Mary Wisniewski. 56% of the tickets that were issued in Chicago for bicycles, for, I guess, breaking the law, and, bicycle tickets were to African Americans, for Black people. And in Chicago, Black people are only a third of the city. So, I know that last year you were talking about this, and it seems to still be a problem. So you want to go on a little bit about that?
Sure. So just briefly here, Mary Wisniewski did her first article last March of 2017. So this is about a year ago. And she looked at, I believe, about a 3 to 4 year time period and found racial inequities in how Chicago Police Department was issuing tickets for cyclists. As you mentioned, Black and brown cyclists were getting relatively more tickets than white cyclists. Then this summer, the city of Chicago announced its Vision Zero action plan, where their geographies that they're focusing on targeted mostly Black, brown, low to moderate income neighborhoods. And the plan led with a police enforcement strategy. As a result of that plan coming out, we challenged the city to remove police enforcement. Eventually, we met a couple times with the mayor's office. And one of the reasons we pointed to that police enforcement strategy as a part of Vision Zero was not the right approach is Mary Wisniewski's original article going back to last March. And the mayor's office assured us they were caught off guard by Mary's article. They had no idea the Chicago Police Department was executing a strategy like this. They've talked to the police department. It's been resolved. The practice has ended. And then about 3-4 weeks ago, Mary updated her article. She released a new article with updated data that shows the same practice is still in place. The Chicago Police Department is continuing to do the same thing. Now, this disparity is much more egregious than it sounds. And here's why. You're correct. Black, brown, white, we all make up about a third of the city. However, bike mode share in this city is not evenly spread out. White people on the north side and middle to upper income neighborhoods ride bikes at much higher rates than Black people in low to moderate income neighborhoods on the south side and west side. Much higher rates. So not only are we getting more tickets than white people, we're getting more tickets and we ride less than white people.
Yeah.
And we know I ride all over this city. I ride in Black neighborhoods, brown, white, middle to upper income, downtown, north side. It doesn't matter. I ride all over the city. And I can tell you this. White people ride just as wild as anybody else. They ride on the sidewalk. They run at red lights. They run in stop signs. And I'm not disparaging that because I do the same thing. The point is they're not getting the tickets for it, and we are. That's racial profiling. And it's racial profiling being executed by an institution in this city that is racist. The mayor said there's racism at CPD. The chief of police said there's racism at CPD. It's an institution that is abusive. The United States Department of Justice said that there was rampant civil rights abuses at Chicago Police Department. It's an institution that is corrupt. Newspapers of record have found that there's entrenched corruption at that institution. And this is the institution we're unleashing on our neighborhoods to so-called make them safer.
We have one question out there in the audience. Someone asked, Charles Sontag, have you gotten any tickets yourself?
I have not. I don't live on the South Side. I live in a neighborhood called South Loop. It's really close to downtown. However, I ride all over the city. I've rode on the South Side, West Side. I've never been stopped. I know people who've been stopped. I know people who've gotten tickets. However, it hasn't happened to me.
No, I mean, I mean, the thing is though, but we need people like you talking about it. Now, can you explain a little bit to people who are not familiar with Chicago? I'll tell you something. The first time I went to Chicago, this is the first thing people told me. They told me to not go to the South Side of Chicago. And they also touched my hair and asked me if my hair real. I mean, that was like, I literally got off the train and that happened within 5 minutes. So can you explain Chicago to me, like South Chicago, to people out there who aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, and before I say that, I do want to say your hair is beautiful. When I met you in DC, I love your hair. It's incredible. So yes, so Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in the world by race, by income, and the South Side and West Side of the city is mostly Black, brown, and low to moderate income. I grew up on the South Side, mostly in a neighborhood called Chatham. I grew up on near 79th and Dan Ryan Expressway. I grew up on 80th in Michigan, to be more precise. My mom still lives on the block. My father still lives a block away. Many of my friends, family still live on the block. You know, this is where I was, practically raised here in Chicago. Here's the thing about Chicago. The perception of violence does not match the reality of violence. What that means is that, well, certainly our neighborhoods have disproportionately higher rates of violence. The perception of violence says that should you be on the South Side or West Side, you probably gonna get shot. And the truth is, millions of people in our neighborhoods, they leave home, they go to school, they go to work, they come back home, and they're not victims of violence, and they're not perpetrators of violence. So there is this 24-hour news cycle and this social media proliferation that tells a story about the South Side of Chicago, which is just not true. I'm not underestimating violence, because certainly violence is a challenge in our neighborhoods, and we need to figure out a way to address it without, using the criminal justice system to do it. However, it's not nearly as violent as the perception will lead one to believe. The South Side is a beautiful part of our city, beautiful parks, beautiful architecture, beautiful organizations doing beautiful work, and beautiful people throughout the South Side of Chicago.
No, I mean, the same thing happened in South Central Los Angeles. People are like, oh my gosh. I'm like, when you live in an area like that, it's just such a small part. It's almost about this unreasonable fear of Black people, of Latino people, and the media just kind of like just keeps feeding into it. And it's like, it makes people think like that something happens to people like every single day. And it just, it's the media. Like someone says, like, if it bleeds, it leads. And it distorts the community. Reduces trust in us and makes us fearful. I mean, great comment, Charles. I mean, but so thank you for explaining it, because I was like, wasn't no Michelle Obama from the South Side of Chicago?
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Come on now. But, I see here that you started Equiticity.
Equiticity.
You started that. And what was your goal when starting that organization?
Sure. So I co-founded Slow Road Chicago. I had been running that organization for about almost 4 years. And there were two things that I wanted to do after, 3 to 4 years of running Slow Road Chicago. One, I wanted to take my work beyond the activity of cycling. So I wanted to start to look at all modes of travel. So I'm still deeply interested in the activity of cycling. However, I'm also interested in walking, public transit, car share, bike share. So I'm interested in all modes of travel. And then number two, I wanted to take my work beyond Chicago. I felt like there were some lessons learned. There were some strategies that we executed through Slow Road Chicago that could be executed across the U.S. in different cities and different neighborhoods, across policy areas, across sectors. And that extended thought process with those two things leading where I wanted to go next ultimately gave way to me giving birth to Equiticity. And Equiticity really is a three-way intersection of racial equity, increased mobility, and racial justice. So I'm interested in equity across the board, across policies, across sectors, across geographies. I'm interested in increased mobility across modes of travel, and I'm interested in racial justice across institutions which commit acts of structural violence against Black, Brown, and Indigenous people in our society.
That sounds wonderful. I mean, when you told me about it, I was like, oh, I want to be part of this. This is awesome. I think that email is like right away. What could I do? Like to put the plugs, make people know like how, because it's such an awesome idea. I know that one of your goals is to like create a dockless bike share, like a bike library for low to moderate income African American and Latino communities. What's a bike share? How does a bike share library work? I mean, because people who are not in the kind of transportation world, what's a bike share library? How does it work? How is the dockless system different than a docking system?
Sure. So in essence, what we want to do is we want to own the delivery of these new transportation technologies, these emerging mobility networks. We want to own how those systems and business models are delivered in our cities and in our neighborhoods. So we're not prepared to wait for a DOT or for a private firm to figure out and ensure that Black, Brown, Indigenous, low to moderate income people find value in these systems. We want to be on the front line in a leadership position, bringing these new systems and these new technologies to our neighborhoods. So dockless bike share is the next wave of bike share. So most people know about traditional bike share systems where a bike is attached to a physical station. You go to the station to rent the bike. When you're done with the bike, you bring it back to a station. That's what we call traditional docking systems. The next wave is what we call dockless systems, where there is no station. And in many cases, you don't even lock the bike to anything physical on the street. There's a lock on the back wheel that locks the wheel so that the bike is not able to roll away. However, the bike is what we call free floating. It could be anywhere. It could be on the sidewalk. It could be in a park. It could be in a gangway. The bike could be located anywhere. And the way you access the bike is by using your phone. Use an app to find where the bike is located, to unlock it. You go for a ride. When you're done, you use the app to lock it back up, and you're done. You can leave it anywhere you want, and the next person will go to find that bike. That is the next wave of bike share in the U.S. Now, some cities have already rolled it out. Seattle, DC, is coming to in San Francisco. So there are some cities that's rolling out dockless bike share, and it's already here. And then there are some cities that have traditional docking systems, and they're trying to figure out, what do we do about all of this investment we've made in docking systems? Although we realize the future of bike share is dockless. So What we want to do here in Chicago is we want to bring dockless bike share to our neighborhoods today. And we want to control how dockless is delivered into our city, into our neighborhoods. We're not going to wait for CDOT to figure that out. And we're not going to wait for dockless bike share providers to figure that out. We are going to be on the front lines in a leadership position, figuring out how to bring dockless bike share to our neighborhoods today. And the way we want to do that is through what we call a bicycle library. So think about this bicycle library similar to a book library. You go into a book library and you check out a book. You go into a bicycle library and you check out a bike. Now, our bicycle library is designed for low to moderate income people who live in the neighborhood that the bicycle library is serving, which means we're not totally focused on profitability. The vast majority of bikes that we rent to people will be made for free because we don't want cost to be a barrier to get people on bikes.
Well, and I have one question before we have a question out there in the audience. Somebody said, is there equity concern in regards to the telephone ownership?
So yes, there are some equity concerns regarding dockless requiring people to use a phone to access the bike. However, a number of dockless systems are rolling out programs that allow people to sign up without a phone. So that potential is coming, and our library will not require a phone to access a bike. So while we're wanting to work with dockless providers to provide the bikes for our libraries, we won't treat the library like a traditional dockless bike share system. So we'll give people these dockless.
Okay, so we're having some technical issues that sometimes happens when we have this show. But, I have to say that, there have been some people who have had some, concerns in regards to phones, and do people who are economically oppressed, will they have access to phones to actually access the bikes? In my opinion, I feel that this is not so much of an issue, because where the bikes are when they're not dockless are in areas that we don't actually live in. And since we don't actually live in those areas, it's kind of like, I was kind of going off your doc share information. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, yeah, I was just kind of explaining the reason why we think, or we feel that, I feel the thing is that the docks are not in our neighborhood. So yes, there might be an equity concern regarding the phones, but it's kind of like if you're in Los Angeles and all the bike shares are in Malibu, you can't, that's actually less equitable because you can't get there. Right. I mean, let's go on to, because we're almost kind of running out of time. You're so interesting. Active Transportation, which is an advocacy group out of Chicago, in the past you teamed with them and with the Chicago Department of Transportation. What were your criticisms? What were you able to change in regards to working with Active Transportation, and because there was something that happened in regards to that? Do you want to go into that, or?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Yes, I with Slow Road Chicago, we worked closely with Active Transportation Alliance over the years on a number of projects. However, from the beginning, we challenged Active Transportation Alliance to commit to equity. This goes back 3-4 years. We challenged them. We challenged them publicly. We challenged them privately when Black and brown people were crying or were calling foul on the way divvy rolled out in our city, the way bike lanes rolled out in our city, and calling for equity at the Chicago Department of Transportation. Active Transportation Alliance stayed silent. Now, at that time, I continued to work with them, because at that point, I felt like it was a good strategy, that they were an important organization that we needed to partner with to make progress in our neighborhoods. it was only this last summer, when I decided that I didn't need Active Transportation Alliance. The people who I needed are people in our neighborhoods, Black, brown, indigenous people in our neighborhoods. That's who I need. I didn't need Active Transportation Alliance, and I was unwilling to continue on equity and not go unchallenged. And what brought that all to bear was their attempt to host a Vision Zero summit about Vision Zero here in Chicago, talk about police enforcement, knowing Vision Zero in this city is targeting mostly communities of color, and not engage with Black and brown people on the South Side and West Side. That was a slap in our face. It was disrespectful, and I wasn't going to let it go. So we challenged them publicly. We called them out. We demanded that they cancel that summit, and eventually they did. By the way, with your support, all the way in New Jersey, in New York, you galvanized people around the U.S. to come and support us on that. So it eventually elevated to a national level, and after about a week and a half, Active Transportation Alliance did cancel that summit.
Okay. No. I mean, it's, that's kind of how I got to know you. I was kind of like, who's this brother? I got to help him out. He's like, from Chicago, and I had experienced such kind of like, I felt the oppression. I mean, I was only there for like a second, and I knew wow, we have to help people there, because there are things that are going on there. It's not right. So when you put the call out, I was like, I'm on it. And just because I'm almost wrapping up, because I know I want to make sure I get everything. I kind of want to end it on a hopeful note, because we're going to see you on Saturday, and you're going to have you're going to be on an equity panel. We're talking about lots of things. So I have to always have we always have to have a Black Panther reference.
Right on.
How can we get to Wakanda? What's your dream? How do you think we can get to a place where we have freedom? I know you go all over the world. You went to Russia, you go to Colombia, you've taken it international. Equiticity is not just a national thing, it's an international thing. So what's your dreams? What's your dreams with that?
So we have to recognize that we have the power. We have the power. The only reason we don't realize we have the power is because the world convinced us that we don't. In the movie Usual Suspects. Well, this is a quick reference. In the movie Usual Suspects, there's a scene where somebody says, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing us that he didn't exist. We've been convinced that we don't have power, when the opposite is true. We have all the power in this society. What we have to do is become scientists around that power. Stop giving it away. Figure out how to harness it for ourselves and build institutions that benefit us, that support us. And when necessary, burn down those structures and institutions and systems which do us harm. We have to build with Wakanda. Wakanda is not going to happen with us just, going to work every day. It's not going to happen with us just sitting back and, dreaming about it. We got to go out and do the work on the ground to make Wakanda a reality. And the fact is, we have everything that it takes to do it. All we have to do is depend on each other. We don't have to depend on anybody else. We need to depend on each other, and we'll be able to build this new vision for our neighborhoods, our cities, and ultimately our planet.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I cannot wait to hear you on Saturday in Trenton. And, I'm going to kind of let everybody know how to support you in Equiticity, how to support you in Chicago, and how to support you nationally so that we can build this movement, support you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
those of you, please, we're going to have different people on the show. We're going to have urban planners, transportation, like Black Kids in Outer Space. We're going to be national, international. We're going to anybody who's out there trying to help Black and brown people. We're going to have them on the show. Black Kids in Outer Space. You can also watch. You can also follow us on Twitter, Black Kids on the Outer Space Show. Again, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate you, and thank you all those who watched and asked questions. Thank you so much. And next week we're going to have Kayla from Girls on Bikes in Newark. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lark.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You have a great evening.
All right. Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever. Black kids in outer space. Black kids in outer space. Black kids in outer space. Urban planning, walking, bicycling, and more in our space.